You're listening to the Toolstation Western League podcast with Ian Knockolds and Tom Hiscott.
Welcome listeners to episode 34 of the Toolstation Western League podcast. I'm Ian Knockolds and I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Tom Hiscott, the editor of the Western League Bulletin. Hello Tom, how are you?
Hi there, yeah, not doing too bad, thanks you.
I've enjoyed a veritable orgy of football this weekend. I had the pleasure of watching Devizes on Saturday, which I know we're going to talk about later in the podcast, but also, of course, my hometown club is Portsmouth, and they had a fantastic win in the Checkatrade Trophy. So I was treated to not one but two astonishing football matches. So I'm really high on life at the moment, and very much looking forward to this week's episode of the podcast. And we welcome onto this show Tony Beecham, the manager of Cribs, and Joe Sharples, the manager of Chippenham Park. And we also see a welcome return to the parish notices section, as well as getting an update from the Football Association on the regulations surrounding promotion and relegation from steps 5 and 6, which of course covers our First Division and our Premier Division. So we've got an action-packed episode of the Western League podcast for the listeners this week. Now, we normally go into the results for the Saturday just gone, which of course this time around will be the 30th of March. But we do have a rather important game in the Les Phillips Cup, a quarter-final match between Buckland Athletic and Cadbury Heath. And I must confess that when we talked about this on last week's podcast, Tom, I rather thought this was a bit of a shoe-in for the home team, but that's not how it proved.
Yeah, indeed. Buckland unbeaten in the Les Phillips for nearly 2 years. Obviously, victors of the competition last year. But knocked out by Cadbury Heath in the quarterfinals, who now go on to play Plymouth Parkway in the final four. Seven places separating the sides in the league. Buckland doing slightly better than Cadbury Heath this term, but it was the Heath who stormed to victory. Really, a 4-1 win away at Buckland, and it was goals twice from Sasha Tong. And then also Matt Huxley, both having pretty good seasons. Two of the Heath star men. And they came to the party in a big 4-1 win for Cadbury Heath, who has to say, through to the semi-finals.
Yeah, that competition really hotting up, and Cadbury Heath proving there that the form book, all the league table counts are absolutely nothing when it comes to these one-off cup games. So that competition really getting exciting as we get to the pointy end. Now, we do turn our attention to Saturday, the 30th of March, and we kick off with a game between two of the top sides in the Premier Division. Bitton were at home to Plymouth Parkway. Yeah,
this was the big game of the weekend, and it finished in a 1-1 draw. Bitton going ahead 10 minutes before the break. Usual source. Joe McLennan in really good form of recent times. I think he scored in all of their games this week over the past 10 days or so. And his bicycle kick, I haven't managed to catch any footage of it, but I imagine it's a bit of a pearl. Most bicycle kicks are. He put them ahead. Plymouth Parkway managed to get back on level terms a couple of minutes later. Their only real attack of the first half, ending with Brian Lane firing home. It was 1-1 at the break. Bitton then reduced to 10 men pretty early in the second half. Dean Griffiths, one of their sharpshooters, picked up a second yellow card. And they were pretty much up against it, I would have thought, against a Parkway team who'd won 16 on the bounce. But it was Bitton who actually went closest to claiming a winner. Matt Groves rattling the crossbar 15 minutes from time. But it obviously didn't go in, and it stayed 1-1, and that was how it remained. So Parkway's winning run brought to an end by Bitton, but 1-1 draw there.
Now, Chipping Sodbury Town, they entertained Wellington, and it was a good win for the home side.
Yeah, indeed. Another game with a red card. This one going to the home side, who actually managed to run out 3-0 victors. Dan Brown heading Chipping Sodbury ahead after just 10 minutes. But then George Box, one of their influential players, was dismissed. Very much handing Wellington a bit of a fillip. But it was Chipping Sodbury managed to push on and claim a 3-0 win. So really impressive afternoon for them. Luke Henderson doubling the advantage 10 minutes before half time. And then Jake Thomas completing the victory for the 10 men of Chipping Sodbury.
Now, Cadbury Heath, fresh from that 4-1 win over Buckland in the week, they travelled to Cribbs and, they found themselves on the wrong end of a 4-goal scoreline in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. A 4-0 win for Cribbs. Pretty easy afternoon for them. Sol Wanjar Smith and Tom Burns each scoring for the home side. And there was also a brace for Jason Vincent, who I think, worthy of a mention at the moment. He's doing really well. Seems to be scoring more often than not. So another 2 for him. And Cribbs, like Vincent, in really good form. And climbing up the table. 4-0 win over Cadbury Heath.
Well, that good form that you're talking about has seen Cribbs win 4 in their last 6 games. So I thought this was a good time to catch up once again this season with Tony Beecham, the Cribbs manager. And I started off by asking Tony whether this good run of form in the last few games shows that his side are targeting a strong finish to this season.
Yeah, every team likes to finish strong. Like I said, at the start of the season, we had a problem with different things and availability and stuff. Now we're at the business end of the season, obviously the teams that are going for the title. We've managed to get through to the County Cup final, which keeps our season alive. So everyone's on their toes and we're trying to win as many games as we can.
You had a 4-0 win at the weekend. Was the game as comfortable as the scoreline suggests?
Yes, I'd like to think so. Obviously, Cadbury had a bit of a spell at the start. We were a bit not at the races, if I'm honest. But the spell. But other than that, I thought we were very comfortable.
I mean, from your position as manager, how important was it for you for the side to bounce back from that defeat to Chipping Sodbury?
Yeah, it was an important win. Obviously Saturday. Obviously the week before we went to Buckland on a heavy pitch. And I think it took its toll when we played Sodbury at home. And to be fair to them, they had a game plan and they caught us out. And it was nice to respond against Cadbury, who I think had the same problem after beating Buckland in the week. So yeah, very happy with the result Saturday.
Well, let's talk about that win against Buckland because you've beaten Westbury, you've beaten Buckland and you've beaten Bradford in the past couple of months. All of those sides are above you in the table. So, I mean, do you think that 9th is perhaps a false league position for Cribbs?
If you would have said that to me at the start of the season, I would have said, no, it's not a false position. Now, I believe, we can, like I've always said, we can always beat anyone in this league on our day. But we just ain't got the consistency. If we can find that throughout a whole season, who knows where it could take us. And we want, like I said, we want to finish the season on a high and finish as high as possible, and obviously, hopefully, win the trophy.
I mean, you've mentioned a bit about the challenges you've faced this season. When you look back on the season, and obviously, as you said, you've still got that County Cup final to look forward to. But when you look back on the season, what do you think your greatest challenges have been in this campaign?
We've had a lot of challenges throughout the campaign. Obviously, in the FA Vars, that was a great achievement for the club. And we always, like I say, we always compete, try to compete against the sides. And it's hard to say, really. But no, we've done well this year. We've done well.
Well, you've got Bridport up next, and then you've got Willand at the Lawns. It's going to be a big week for your club, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Obviously, I think we've got a little bit of a say in the title race, if I'm quite honest with you. Obviously, we've got Willand Saturday, and I think we've got Bitton on Bank Holiday Monday. So we've got a little bit of a say in the title race. And like I said just a minute ago, we'll be looking to win as many games as we can. And we're going into Wednesday game against Bridport, obviously full of confidence after Saturday's result, and hopefully we can try and grab another 3 points. Given
that you've got Willand and Bitton yet to play, this isn't particularly the easiest question perhaps for you to answer. But I mean, when you look at the 3 sides going for that one promotion spot this season, who do you have a feeling at this stage who you think might be there or thereabouts come the final day of the season?
That's a difficult one. At the start of the season, I think you asked me the same question, and I said Willand. I said Willand will win the league this year. But we played Parkway about a month ago, I believe, and they taught us a lesson, and they were very, very good on the day. So it's quite hard to tell. Bitton are a good side as well. So I wouldn't like to pick one, to be honest. I'm quite happy to sit back and let them carry on, to be honest.
Let the chips fall where they may. We talked about the games coming up. Westbury, Bridgewater, Bitton. You've got Bridport, of course, and Willand this week. I mean, there's still so much to play for this season for you. But, I mean, how important is the way that you finish this season for the way that you want to start next season's campaign? Or aren't you thinking about next season?
No, not really. I'm not. Next season, not even thought about it, to be honest. We've got a lot to play for. Obviously, we've got a chance of finishing 6th in this league, and for a club like ours, that's a massive achievement in my eyes. We've had a great FA Vase run, and like I said, we're in the County Cup final. So if we can finish 6th, that will be a great season for us.
Now, one final question for you, Tony. A couple of weeks ago on the podcast, we broke the news that sin bins were going to become part of the Western League next season. What do you make of that initiative?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Obviously, wouldn't like to criticise any referees, but like I say, that bringing that into the game would suit the football league definitely, because I think there's some harsh decisions being made throughout the season, and I think it will be a very good introduction.
And my thanks to Tony for his time. Now, moving on to Roman Glass St George. They've spent all of this season at the wrong end of the division, but they did get a good win at home to Shepton Mallet on Saturday.
Yeah, they did, and much of this was down to the return of one of their star men, Ryan Radford. He's been out for 4 or 5 weeks with an injury, but he returned and made an instant impact. The game was 1-1 at half-time, Reece Hodgson having put Roman Glass ahead before James Billing headed home an equaliser for Shepton. But then, Radford, as I say, out for a month or so with an injury, returning to the side and, scoring twice in the second half to lead Roman Glass to a victory. It helps them move slightly to 17th. So, good afternoon for Roman Glass. So they haven't had too many things to shout about recently, so an impressive victory for them. Now,
finally in the Premier Division, we talk about Willand Rovers. They were at home to Clevedon Town, and the key question is, Tom, could they take advantage of that draw between Bitton and Parkway?
Yeah, so they did just about. Coming from behind in this one, behind at the break, Sid Camp having smashed Clevedon into a pretty early lead, following a long throw from Sam Larkins. But then, Willand must have been given a stern talking to at the break, coming out in the second half, and making a strong start to the second period. Ben Dickel scoring twice inside 10 minutes off the restart to put them 2-1 up. Luke Mortimer, obviously their leading scorer of the season, adding another one to his tally to make it 3-1. Before there was a late consolation for Sam Bell, for Clevedon, and so eventually Willand running out 3-2 victors.
Another job, another saving. Brought to you by Toolstation.
Is this all the receipts?
Yes, boss.
For everything we got from Toolstation?
Yeah, why?
I just thought we'd spend a lot more than this.
Oh, no. We got all the best brands too. Makita, Santex, Karcher, Nest.
Top job, top saving.
With over 15,000 trade quality products at prices that are hard to beat, we're here to save you on every job. At Toolstation.com and all 340 branches.
Now, moving on to the First Division, and, Cheddar had the opportunity to mathematically secure at least one of the top 2 positions in the league. We'll have a talk about what exactly that means in terms of promotion a bit later in the podcast. But, Wells City were the visitors, and they proved the party poopers on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a couple of Somerset sides going at it. Wells managing to complete a pretty unlikely double over the promotion chasers. Mark Randall's deflected effort, putting the visitors ahead pretty early before Ollie Hucker managed to level things for Cheddar after just 15 minutes. Dale Huntland restoring Wells' advantage, but then they lost a man to a red card just before half-time to very much give Cheddar a helping hand during the second half, going up against 10. But they were unable to capitalise, and it stayed 2-1 to Wells. Backline doing a fantastic job after the break, and as I say, keeping Cheddar out and completing a double over the Cheesemen, having beaten them 3-0 pretty recently. So another really good afternoon for Wells.
Now, our next game sees Chippenham Park take on Bishop Sutton. These are 2 sides at the wrong end of the table. Chippenham Park in particular in trouble, but one of the hallmarks of the relegation battle this season in the First Division is the ability of teams at the bottom of the table to take points regularly, take points off of teams around them, and of course take points teams that are higher placed. And this is exactly how Saturday's game proved. It was a close run thing, but Chippenham Park securing all 3 points, Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say very much the case at Harden Hewish on Saturday afternoon. Just one goal deciding this one, and it was Lewis Ellington before half-time, giving Chippenham Park the 1-0 victory, and I have to say, very much needed. It could just drag Bishop Sutton into the relegation scrap if they're not careful. So but a good win for Chippenham Park nonetheless.
Excellent. Well, it seemed like a good time to catch up with the Chippenham Park manager, Joe Sharples. Of course, we like to talk to sides when they've had a win, and boy, did Chippenham Park need one. So it was very interesting to get Joe's thoughts on the run-in now to the end of the season. But I did start by congratulating Joe on that victory, on that crucial victory against Bishop Sutton at the weekend.
Yes, really pleased. Performances, we'd been a little bit hot and cold in the build-up. We'd been missing a few important players, but we played really well, created a lot of chances, and held on to get the result. The only frustration was maybe that it should have been a couple more, but really pleased to get an important win for us.
I mean, it's really congested at the bottom of the First Division table. As I look at it, I mean, I can see really anyone from the bottom 6 being in danger. Is that how you see it?
Yes, it keeps changing each week. The first sort of thing you do after the games is get on the Toolstation app and have a look at the results and Twitter to see who's done what. So yeah, it's very tight. Teams get surprise results. I think Radstock got a last-minute winner on the weekend as well. So it will change on a weekly basis. Tonight's important for us against Welton because it's our game in hand. So we've always had the advantage of having our destiny in our own hands. So tonight's really important from that point of view, but I'm sure there'll be a lot more twists and turns before the end of the season.
Am I right in thinking that this was the third week in a row that you'd taken on teams around you?
Yes, you'd be right. We played at Portishead last Saturday, had a disappointing result there. Obviously, Bishop Sutton were right on the fringes, and now our win has sort of dragged them into it. And we've still got Oldlands to play and sort of a couple of others. So what with telephones as well midweek, they've taken real meaning to the term 6-pointers because of the stage of the season and where the teams are.
Have you found it harder playing against sides that are fighting for survival rather than perhaps teams that would have been in mid-table or even towards the top of the table that haven't actually got anything to play for?
Difficult one to answer. We've played some teams that I thought maybe wouldn't have the drive to sort of really go out and perform because they haven't got anything to play for, and they've actually turned out to be a very competitive, well-organised team. It's been very strange. I think everybody obviously wants to finish the season on a high. There's always a reason to play. The table's very tight, even in the mid sort of places of sort of 5th to 12th, 13th. So there's never an easy game, and I wish there was. But it's just sort of the nature of the league. We've got to make sure that we treat each team with respect. Welton haven't got anything to play for tonight, but they'll want to make sure that they don't come to Harding Hewish and get beaten by a team that's obviously fighting for relegation. So there's always reasons and edges that managers will get their teams to play and perform. So while on paper it might seem like easier or harder games, in reality I don't think it ever works out like that.
I mean, looking over your results over the last couple of months, you've had a couple of heavy defeats, but most of the matches that you have lost out, you've only lost by the odd goal. So when you look back on your form, how do you feel about it this season?
Probably frustrated. I think we've had 4 or 5 games where we've had 2-goal leads and surrendered them. Normally in the last 10-15 minutes. Obviously we're quite a young side, so those things happen, and those things haven't happened as much towards the end of the season. So when you look at those sort of ifs and buts, we probably should be mid-table, but we're not, and they've been our problems. But I've been really pleased with how we've played, given the circumstances we were thrown into at the start of the season. The team has improved. We've struggled the last month because we've had 4 or 5 very important players for us injured or unavailable. We have them back now for the final sort of 6 games of the season. So we're positive that we can perform, but knowing that we've got some very tough games coming up against some teams that will there's a couple of local derbies in there, so they'll want nothing more than to, make our season as hard as possible by getting 3 points from us.
You've mentioned that Welton Rovers game, which is tonight, and then it's Chard at the weekend. I mean, you've obviously every point is crucial at the moment, but if you aren't able to get anything out of tonight's game, it really does put quite a lot of pressure on that match against Chard, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Each game, obviously, that goes by means you've got less games to get the total number of points that we've sort of targeted. So yeah, it will be a tough game. We've obviously then straight after we've got Colne on Tuesday night as well. So it's a really important sort of couple of weeks for us. But I'm not really looking beyond tonight. We put our energies and efforts and preparation into tonight and give it our best. And if we get a favourable result, it doesn't really take the pressure off Saturday either, but it just puts us one step closer to where we want to be and obviously sort of survive and stay in the league.
I mean, you mentioned a points total there. Have you got a target in mind of the number of points that either you think that you need to stay safe or that you've set for the players to try and achieve this season?
I think we're looking really to try and achieve 40 points. From the limited research I've done, nobody's gone down with that number of points or finished in sort of obviously the relegation places. So that's what we believe is attainable from the games that we've got. So that's what we'd like to go with. Obviously, our game in hand tonight is crucial to achieving that, and I think we do have the quality to go on a run, because if you look at the form of our season, our wins have sort of come in clusters of 3 or 4 in 5 or 6 games. So obviously we got a good win on Saturday. So I'm hoping at this stage of the season we can then go on a little sort of run and get a combination of 3-4 important wins to take us there. But I think 40 points would certainly see us safe and finish above others, mainly because obviously we've got to play. We've still got to play Oldlands, who are in and around the relegation battle as well.
Well, talking about the games that are coming up between now and the end of the season, I noticed that 3 of your last 4 matches are against Wiltshire sides. And one thing we've noticed on the podcast is that how the crowds increase when you have a Wiltshire derby. So, from your perspective, is it easier to get your players up for those Wiltshire derby matches, or actually does it make your life a little bit difficult because the other sides have so much more to play for?
Our players probably don't, because they're so young. They're maybe not as connected to the Wiltshire rivalry as perhaps the other teams. Obviously, there's a little bit of history from sort of the summer, and a lot of Park's old squad are now at Corsham and now at Colne. So that adds an edge and dynamic from their point of view. Our players, I would say, don't really notice or feel it. They just view it as a game of football, which, yeah, I'm pleased with. But certainly for the other teams, I think it gives them motivation and an additional reason to perform and obviously try and win the game. So we have to adapt to that. In our previous games against Corsham and Colne, late goals cost us, but we performed really well, and we handled what was a difficult atmosphere for such a younger team really well. So with that experience behind us, I think the boys will be fine. I've got no sort of concerns about the atmosphere or sort of the games and the opposition obviously having an additional reason of it being a derby to play and to beat us. I think when we play Warminster, they I think are a very different team to what we faced first game of the season. And obviously they've had a great season and have sort of established themselves in the league. So that'll be a very tough game. But I'm hoping that with it being last game of the season, that we can have a nice sunny day and a game of football with nothing riding on it.
And one final question for you, Joe. Over the last couple of weeks, we've talked a bit about sin bins and the introduction of sin bins into the Western League next season. As a manager, how do you feel about that?
I've got to be careful how I word it. I'm not a fan. Previous discussions, it seems very complex. I think the traditional system works. I think the key is referees being consistent with their decisions and with their communications. So if they're treating both players on both sides the same, with their cards and their communication, then that should be enough. I think, yes, I'd like it tested more before it sort of comes in. But, that is sort of what we've got to deal with. So I'm going to have to read up on the rules and get a good understanding of what impact it has during the game. But from the last time I had a really good look at it, it looked very complex and had a lot of unanswered questions. So if I'm honest, I'm not a fan, and I much prefer the current traditional system of yellows and red cards.
And my thanks to Joe for his time. Now, in another part of Wiltshire, we move on to the game that I was at. Devizes Town at home to Longwell Green Sports. A tale of two halves. Tom, tell us your tale of those two halves.
Do my best to do it justice. I'm sure you can probably add a few, bit of flesh to the bones. But a 4-2 victory for Devizes, but that's not half of it. Longwell Green in an absolutely commanding position at the break. 2 goals up, Courtney Charles, followed by a penalty from Ali Bamford, and also a man up, Jack Bramwell, dismissed the foul which led to Bamford's penalty. 2-goal lead for Longwell Green, obviously up into the top 5 spots recently, so they're having a really good second half to the season, looking in command. Devizes without a home win in more than 3 months. Somehow, somewhere they managed to turn it around with 10 men after the break. 2 goals apiece from Sam Dodds and Jade Waters, completing a pretty remarkable turnaround. And Devizes running out 4-2 victors. Well,
Tom, you know me, I'm not a man who's prone to hyperbole. But I would say that I have seen the temples of Bangkok, and I have seen the smile on the Mona Lisa, and I have seen the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, but I have never seen a Toolstation Western League game like that before. It was quite remarkable. In the first half, Longwell Green were by far and away the better side. I was really impressed with their physique and their organisation. They were really strong. And frankly, they had a couple of players who should have been playing in the Southern League, let alone the Western League, I thought. And really, when Devizes were down to 10 men, having conceded that penalty to go 2-0 down, I thought it was game over, and there was an awful lot of long faces around me. But something quite remarkable must have happened in the changing rooms at half-time, because what we saw in the second half, frankly, if you'd have seen it in a movie, I don't know, would it have been Rorke's Drift? I'm not sure. It was just one of those epic performances, and they never stopped believing. And it was, it was a really special day, certainly for everybody at Devizes. An awful lot of smiley faces, at the final whistle. Having got 1 goal back and then 2, I think Longwell Green started to panic a bit. And then when the third went in, if there had been a roof on Nurstead Road, it would have blown off. I'm quite sure. I was able to wrestle away the telephone from my daughter Betty, who'd accompanied me on Saturday, and I did manage to get a video of Devizes' third goal. So if you follow me on social media, that's at Ian Knockholds, you'll see that. You'll see that goal. But don't worry too much about the camera work or the goal. I think the audio says it all. It was fantastic for certainly the home fans to get that win. And it was a really enjoyable way to spend a beautiful Saturday afternoon in the heart of Wiltshire. And the fact that you can watch that degree of drama for £5, I think says everything about Western League football. But anyway, that's enough from me about my afternoon at Devizes. We move on to another one of the sides at the wrong end of the table. Another side, of course, close to my heart, Radstock Town, and they had an important win at home against Bishop's Lydiard.
Yeah, indeed. Plenty more drama in another First Division game. Bishop's Lydiard going ahead in this one. Ryan Burrison pretty early. Putting them ahead, but then Radstock managed to move into a 2-1 lead at the break. Sean Derrick and Luke Ingram getting on the score sheet for them. Zach Ryder header just after the hour mark managed to level things up, and it was headed towards a draw. But then Radstock with the final attack of the game managed to snatch all 3 points, and it was James Russell heading home and helping Radstock move up the table a little bit. So a 3-2 win for them at home to Bishop's Lydiard. Excellent stuff. And our final featured match in the First Division sees Inform Warminster Town take on Bristol Telephones. Yeah, Inform and free scoring at the moment, Warminster. A 4-0 win for them over the bottom side, a couple for Jake Wright, and there was also goals from Evan Mortimer-Taylor and Lewis Graham. So a 4-0 win for Warminster.
A 4-0 win on the pitch and a 3-figure attendance. So Warminster doing things the right way, both on and off the pitch this season, and a club we should all keep our eye on over the next coming months. Now, we take a look at the up-and-coming fixtures. Normally, of course, we move straight on to the weekend, which will be Saturday the 6th of April, but we can't really do that before calling out one fixture in particular that will probably have happened by the time you listen to the podcast, but certainly a fixture and a result that everybody in the Western League should take notice of. A fixture on Tuesday the 2nd of April, Tom.
Yeah, massive. A perfect way to start April, really. First division title not officially on the line, of course, still 4 or 5 games after this one to come for the two sides, but Cheddar versus Keynsham, the top two, been switching places in the top 2 spots towards the summit of the first division for a couple of months now, and they meet on Tuesday evening at Cheddar, and well, obviously quite a lot at stake, so a huge game on Tuesday between Cheddar and Keynsham.
Well, we move on to Saturday the 6th of April now, and we start in the Premier Division. What is your pick of the weekend's fixtures, Tom?
I think I'll plump with the Plymouth Parkway Bridgewater to game. Plymouth Parkway, obviously, winning run coming to an end on Saturday afternoon, and now hope to start a new run, I guess, against a Bridgewater side also in the top 4, and also very, very capable of keeping clean sheets and scoring lots of goals themselves. So, something's got to give there. Parkway probably, in need of the 3 points a little bit more than Bridgewater, who are probably out of the title race. But they'll be a tough opponent. So that should be a good one on Saturday.
Now, the other fixture that we have to take notice of course, in the Premier Division involves Willand Rovers. This time they're on the road. They travel to Cribbs, and we know from Tony just how they're approaching the end of this season, so they won't get an easy ride away at Cribbs, and Cribbs, as we know, in good form, but Willand will need to take something from that game, I'm sure, to keep pressure up at the top of the table. Now then, moving on to the First Division, Tom, which game has caught your eye there?
Come for a couple of top 5 sides, well, obviously at the time of recording. So we've got Longwell Green, they're at home, obviously hit by a bit of a shock on Saturday afternoon away at Devizes, would be the game you're at. Hosting a National and Backwell side who also, I think, only settled for a draw on Saturday. So, two teams wanting to get back to winning ways, and that should be a pretty good game there.
Well, one game that did catch my eye was Carn Town against Cheddar. Carn have been in good form this season, although they had a bit of a blip recently, but of course Cheddar need all the points they can get, so away from home. That should be an interesting game. But the game that really caught my eye was at the other end of the table. Not so much the away side, but Bristol Telephones. The hosts take on Devizes. Now, I'm not going to go into another rant about how wonderful Devizes were at the weekend. But what I should say is that Devizes had 2 16-year-olds in their starting lineup at the weekend, and also a whole host of reserve team players. So I wouldn't go as far as to say they're down to the bare bones, but they're clearly a side that, at this end of the season it has its own selection problems. Now, Bristol Telephones are fighting for their lives. They're not doing a bad job at all of keeping up with the sides around them at the bottom of the First Division. It's very tight and congested there, as we know, but they will need to get something from this game, I think, if they're going to keep that pressure up on those sides that are around them. So I think in terms of relegation from the First Division, this fixture could prove to be particularly crucial for the home side. Now, last week we did the league table, and this week we are going to have a look at our hot shots, but not before I have a quick look at the issue of promotion and relegation concerning steps 5 and 6. Now, I've been in touch with the Football Association to try and get some clarification on this, and I can read a statement that has come from the FA, and that says that in terms of promotion and relegation from steps 5 and 6, the clubs in the bottom 2 places in each of the 14 divisions at step 5 at the end of the regular season will be relegated and placed in the most geographically appropriate division of Step 6. Now, of course, Step 5 is our Premier Division. Step 6 our first division. And what interests me about that statement is that when we talk about the most geographically appropriate division of Step 6, we know that last season we've already had member clubs move out of the Western League, not because of matters of promotion and relegation, but because of reorganisation that the Football Association has done. And I'm, of course, talking about Almondsbury, Ury and Malmesbury. Now, it's also interesting to see that as far as promotion from the First Division is concerned, the statement reads that the clubs relegated from the Premier Division will be replaced by the 19 clubs finishing in first position in each of the leagues at Step 6. So if you win the First Division, you are guaranteed a promotion. And at the end of the regular season, together with the required number of clubs finishing in second position at the end of the regular season on a points per match ratio. Now, at the moment, we don't know how many of those clubs finishing second will be in a position to get promoted, and there's been some discussion around whether of the 19 leagues that we're talking about, we don't know whether it will be 9 or 11 of those leagues that will supply a side into for promotion. But what I can tell you is that some analysis that I've seen on the internet would suggest that at the moment, whether it's Keynsham or whether it's Cheddar that finished second on the current points per game ratio, both would be in a position to go up. Now, there's no guarantee there. Sadly for all of us, these matters won't appear not to be settled on the football pitch, which is a bit of a shame, but they will be settled one way or another at the end of the season, and we will keep you abreast as best we can on any of those developments as we know what's going on. But of course, one of the things we know at every level of the game of football is that clubs moving between divisions is often determined by matters outside of our control, including clubs going out of business. Now, we certainly hope that's not going to happen to any of our sides, and at the moment, I don't believe it is. So we'll watch that. We'll watch this space. Anyway, that's that situation regarding promotion and relegation, and of course we will have a chat next week about what that means in terms of the tables. But this week we are going to have a look at the hot shots, Tom. So can you take us through who is hot in the Toolstation Western League?
Sure. So, looking at league goals only at the moment, Premier Division, we've got Jack Taylor leading the way from Bridgewater. A couple more goals on Saturday afternoon in their latest win. So he's on 28 league goals. You've then got a couple of players on 23. You've got Callum Demkiv of Westbury, and then Willem's Luke Mortimer, also on 23. So they're both having fantastic seasons. In the First Division, it's a shootout between the two Cheddar forwards. You've got Adam Wright currently leading the way, 27. Adam Jones in second place on 26. So obviously one goal behind his teammate, and obviously they've got quite a lot to play for as a team over the next couple of weeks. So probably not concentrating too much on the leading scorer charts, but those two are currently top of the chart in the First Division. Callum Townsend of Ashton Backwell, he got his 20th league goal of the season on Saturday, so congratulations to him. He's in third. And then in all competitions, so including the Cups, we've got Mortimer of Willands on 34. He's top. Taylor of Bridgewater at 32. Just one ahead of Demkiv of Westbury, who's on 31. You've also got Ben Bammon of Bitton. He's also got 32, just like Taylor. So, those are your top strikers at the moment.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much for that. And now a return to an old friend of the podcast. It's our parish notices section. Back on Saturday, when I was having a chat with with some of the people from Longwell Green, I had a chat with John Gibbs, who I met the last season's Les Phillips Cup final. John told me about a number of vacancies that they've got at Longwell Green, so I'm very happy to sort of bring those to the listeners' attention. They're looking for a first-team secretary for next season, so anybody interested in that position needs to get in touch with John. You'll find them on Twitter, you'll find them on the internet, of course. You can Google them as well. And there is another vacancy that they're advertising, and that is that they are looking to recruit a new management team for their under-18 side. That plays in the Somerset Floodlit League, and that again is another position that they're looking to recruit for next season. So anybody interested in that, also get on to Longwell Green. But also, if you're a club and you've got some vacancies or you've got some events coming up towards the end of the season, then please let us know and we'll do our best to publicise them on the Toolstation Western League podcast. Now, Tom, we've been having a look at your excellent bulletin for this episode, as we always do, of course. Where can the listeners find that?
So, that should be on the Toolstation Western League website. It should be on the homepage. I think it's downloadable in the PDF format, which is on there, and there's also a table on the top which takes you to the most recent bulletin. Yeah, so that's available in 2 places on the official website. That's excellent. And have you penned your column for the non-league paper? Yeah, Step 5 and 6 section. I think it was the featured league this week, so it's slightly increased in words, and I think there's a picture from that big Bitton Parkway game. So yeah, that'd be an important one to check out for the Western League followers. That's excellent, Tom. Thank you very much for your time on this week's podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you next week on the Tool Station Western League podcast.